Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining us for another episode of our Nonprofit Fundamentals video series. I'm April Kushner, partner here at SAX in our nonprofit practice, and I'm joined with Adam Holzberg, also partner in our NFP practice. And today we have a guest that we want to talk to a little bit about DAFs. So we're joined today with Bill Connor from our SAX Wealth Advisors group, and Bill is going to talk a little bit about what a DAF is. But first, Bill, will you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, great. Thanks, April. Nice to meet everyone out there in virtual world. Partner here at SAX as well. I'm on the wealth advisor side of things. We work with individuals, institutions, nonprofits on setting up investment policies, investment management needs, as well as broader financial planning that can really span the gamut for the personal side of things like retirement planning, down to aligning your mission with your money on the nonprofit or endowment side of things. So, a wide range of services that we have to offer here. But happy to talk about donor advised funds. They are a great tool for people who are charitably inclined that can also get some nice tax benefits, which we'll touch on as well.
So you already started. You define what a DAF is, a donor advised fund.
Mhm.
Um, but what exactly is it? How does it work?
Sure. Yeah. And it's very basic. A DAF is just an investment account, and now it has some structures around it that provide charitable deductions. And so, technically, a DAF, DAF, is a donor advised fund. Oftentimes, you're going to see these offered through major financial institutions. Fidelity Charitable is well known for theirs. Charles Schwab also have one. Those are probably the two we work with most frequently. But ultimately, it's a vehicle that allows you to deposit cash, or my preference, which is appreciated securities, into this account. What happens at that point is you get an immediate charitable deduction. The funds go into the DAF, and then over time you can send the money out or recommend the money be sent out to various organizations. Generally speaking, if they're a 501c3, a legitimate 501c3, they're going to be able to receive those kinds of funds. But it creates a situation where investors have a lot of flexibility around the timing and, of course, whom receives these donations.
So with the timing, when do clients typically disperse the funds to nonprofits versus just lay and sit and accumulate? Like how do they determine when they want to send it out? Have you seen?
Yeah, that does vary from need to need, frankly, and
Yeah.
certainly there are times I've seen where people have put money into a DAF and the next day it's gone off to various charities. More often than not, though, what I've seen is that they're typically spread out over a few years. Different organizations have different rules on when the money must be dispersed. I generally have seen a range of say 3 to 5 years, pretty common. These are oftentimes going to be more active contributions to the charities than say something like a charitable remainder trust, where it might be many years in the future before the charity actually receives the money. But it does vary from person to person. And when you think about the funding of these things as well, that can be done on an annual basis, which is very popular with a lot of clients. Or sometimes what you'll see is people will kind of group or batch together a number of years worth of charitable contributions into a single contribution that's in a single calendar year to try to maximize their tax benefits. At the end of the day, all these things are always about you have to have a charitable intent. These are great tools, but if you're just doing it for some kind of tax write-off, well, it doesn't really make sense. But certainly from a benefit in these different charities and not-for-profits, a phenomenal tool to help them out.
But from an individual perspective, like you said, they can bunch all of that into one year, donate funds into a DAF, and then have it actually dispersed over several years.
That's correct. And that's oftentimes what you see these days, especially post 2017 Tax Cut and Jobs Act, where the standard deduction was basically doubled. It made it less attractive for many people to give on an annual basis from a tax perspective, I'll say, because they weren't going to be able to capture that as a charitable deduction because it simply didn't match the so-called double standard deduction that you have now.
Mhm.
Whereas if, to your point, April, you do it, several years at once, 3, 4, 5 years at once, many times that is meaningful enough where it would make sense to make an itemized deduction as opposed to the standard deduction. And then, of course, you can dole it out over time. So, maybe it's something you want to make sure that your alma mater is getting money every year that your child is going to school there, or It's very flexible. Maybe it's a church or a temple that you're interested in helping out, but you want to make sure that it's spread out over, a number of years. One of the beauties of these DAF accounts is they enable that flexibility.
Mhm. So some advantages is there for an individual.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
So you kind of touched on it already, but when it comes to wealth management, how do DAFs kind of fit into the broader realm of wealth management for your clients?
Yeah, they're a tool, and I think they're a great tool to use. I mean, one of the benefits is that you can, put the money into the DAF in a single year, and as we've just talked about, spread it out over time. But that money doesn't need to sit in cash. You can actually set it up as an investment portfolio, so the donation can grow over time. And that's another reason that these things are very popular, is it provides a lot of flexibility on what happens to the money after the donation has been made. Ideally, of course, you see growth in the market, whether stock or bonds, whatever the case might be. And of course, you have more money to give to charity over time, as opposed to that one donation in one particular year.
Mhm.
I guess the other big thing I'd say is just from an estate planning perspective, this is oftentimes a great tool. If you do have an estate tax issue, this is a nice way to get some money out of your estate in a relatively quick fashion. Whereas with other kinds of tools, if you're trying to set up some kind of charitable trust or any trust in general, there's oftentimes pretty significant legal costs with that. And it oftentimes takes time. It's not something that you can do overnight. Donor advised funds can be set up relatively quickly. Obviously, there's some account opening procedures you still have to go through, but that's been beneficial for a lot of clients where perhaps they didn't know they had an estate tax issue. For instance, in the state of New York, a relatively low threshold to meet the state estate tax level. You might not have a federal tax problem, but you could have a state estate tax problem, and this has been a nice solution for folks to help manage some of that as well. At the end of the day, it's always about having a charitable intent. If you have charitable intent, this is certainly a tool that can be used and be used effectively to help manage both, your current income taxes, your longer term estate taxes, and of course, most importantly, provide for the charity or nonprofit.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that's important for someone working with a nonprofit is being able to understand DAFs, why they're advantageous, what's some pitfalls, and making sure that they can educate any of their donors. Because I'm sure a nonprofit has donors that have been donating to them for years, and maybe as they're getting older, or they're looking at maybe a charitable remainder trust or something else, they may be looking at other things to do with their money if they're philanthropic. So I think nonprofits need to know a little bit about this to be able to educate individuals who've been donating to them.
Absolutely. And also something it's a lot more accessible than charitable trust. For many folks, charitable trust, just the dollars, it starts to make sense for setting up, taking the time and spending the money with the attorneys. You have to have oftentimes a more sizable amount of money that you're willing to put into the trust at that particular moment in time. DAFs are very flexible. You could do, one amount one year. Next year, let's say you got a big bonus and it was something you wanted to help out some others with, well, then you can do more. So the flexibility of a DAF is something that a lot of folks like, even if they have the means to set up charitable trusts. Sometimes a DAF is a better solution for them just because of the flexibility that it provides, and the fact that over time your ability to donate may change, and DAFs can adjust with that, whereas trusts oftentimes are kind of not quite set in stone. As we know, they can be hard to decant, as they say. So something that is a very flexible approach, and that very attractive for a lot of folks.
Yeah, good point.
So one thing that nonprofits are always concerned about is that when a DAF donation comes in, it's anonymous. They don't always know who it's from. So from your perspective, based on your clients, how can nonprofits better get in front of potential DAF donors?
Yeah, I think it's just being aware that these things even exist. It's been surprising sometimes how many folks aren't aware that these accounts are out there. But making it part of your process as you're out there, if you're a not-for-profit, you're talking to donors, you're talking in the fundraising space, making sure people are aware that this is an option and that's something that, might make sense. Obviously we'll get the caveat, go talk to your advisor, whether it's a tax advisor or financial advisor, to make sure it makes sense for you. But it's certainly an area that I've seen increasing interest and something that, again, very flexible solution, that can make a lot of sense. And I think when you think about the ultimate impact of these, because they're so flexible, it's attractive not just from a dollar timing perspective, but it also might be that, let's make up a story that there's a hurricane and you want to donate to that hurricane relief fund in this particular year. You could do that pretty flexibly, whereas other solutions, might not provide that same flexibility.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a great tool for individuals for many different reasons, as you went over. And I think nonprofits, as it's kind of new still, nonprofits are just trying to figure it out how to get in front of it and message to it.
Absolutely. And, it's something I think, most people on the nonprofit side have recognized that, giving appreciated securities is an attractive donation from a person, and they want to make sure that they're able to accept those kinds of things. And much like that, where it took some time for that to be kind of broadly accepted, I think DAFs are kind of moving in that direction where more people are aware of them now and making it part of, when they talk to donors, making it part of what they're identifying as potential solutions. And, ultimately, I think that's, if you're in the not-for-profit side, understanding, where the potential funding sources is very important. And this is certainly a good one and a growing one within the industry.
How much would you say that it's grown over the past several years?
Uh, you know, exponentially. I mean, I've seen more and more people become aware of these things, and because again, of flexibility in places like Fidelity Charitable, that have really just done an excellent job for clients. People have a good experience. They go tell their friends and family and all that kind of stuff, and that's certainly continuing to be the case. The investment flexibility has also been a big deal for folks and being able to work with an advisor. Perhaps there's a long-term advisor that they've been working with, that they like to stay involved with the funds. And generally speaking, that's something that a lot of these DAFs can accommodate. So not only does it provide these nice tax benefits, the timing benefits, but if there's someone that you've become comfortable with over the years and has done a good job, and you have to continue with that for the benefit of the charity, many times you're able to do that as well. Which does raise, one thing folks should be aware of. DAFs are not free, so there are costs involved with those. There's typically a sliding kind of schedule, if you will, that I've seen oftentimes half a percentage point for smaller dollar amounts, but quickly dropping down as you start to increase to the $5 and $10 million range. You start to move down into basis point talk, and there's a cost there, there's administrative costs and all those kinds of things, of course, that needs to be recouped by these firms, but they're very reasonable. And my experience has been generally that they're a more cost-effective type of account than, again, spending the money with an attorney. And I'm a big fan of charitable trusts, especially charitable remainder trusts. I think they're an excellent tool, but they're not for everyone. And again, the DAF is more accessible. If you do work with a manager, of course, there may be some fees involved with that as well. So it's important that people understand. There's many benefits here, but there's also some cost. And as you're doing your cost benefit, to really understand what that's going to mean for you, it is a completed gift. So this is something you're not going to be able to pull the money back. Once it's moved into the DAF account, it's done. You get your charitable deduction, of course, but it's not your money any longer after that. Technically, what you're doing is providing recommendations to these financial institutions around where this money should go. I've never heard or seen it where they didn't take the recommendation, so long as it was, a legitimate, 501(c)(3) organization. But that's something to understand, just the logistics of how this works. It's a one-way street, so to speak. Once you get into the DAF, there's no going back.
There's no going back. Yeah, no redos there.
Yeah, no redos, exactly.
Yeah.
No. But I think for those people who are interested in this type of solution, some different providers out there that you can kind of kick the tires on and see what makes sense for you. Many people have Fidelity and Schwab accounts, and certainly, working through SAX Wealth Advisors, we talk about this with a lot of our clients as we go through, the broader planning process and you talk about things like tax planning and estate planning, this of course falls very much in line with those two areas of planning, and can be a big solution. And many times what I've seen is, especially when people are younger, this is a nice way to start your charitable giving, right? You may not know necessarily where you want the money to go, how much is really feasible for you on a year in and year out basis. But DAFs, you can start with relatively low amounts of money, and something that gives people the ability to start to learn and understand, what's the charitable landscape look like? What's important to me? That's oftentimes one of the biggest questions that people are struggling with is, where do I even send the money? So being able to look through that and take some time, after you've already made the deduction, or in the charitable deduction, so to speak, take some time and figure out exactly, to whom this money would be sent out.
Mhm. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's not new, but it feels new, and it's just so rapidly growing. So it's very interesting just kind of see how it's been developing.
Yeah, it has certainly become increasingly, I think there's just a better general awareness of it.
Yeah.
I guess kudos to some of these DAF guys and their marketing teams, but it's certainly something that folks are a lot more aware of. It used to be when I would raise it with clients, many people had never heard of it before. Now I have people coming to me and asking me about these things. And in fact, I just got an internal referral here for someone who was asking about this and wanted to know more. So there's certainly generally more awareness of it, but there's also been some changes in the tax code and
Yeah.
things like that have made these things more attractive to a lot of folks who want to give.
Well, thank you that's a lot of information on DAFs. I think we're all experts now at this point. But no, I mean, for our nonprofits out there, this isn't going away. It's rapidly growing. So definitely need to become more knowledgeable about this and tell their donors about it. I'm sure they have DAFs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can speak for myself here on the SAX Wealth side. It's an area that provides, a lot of planning for the individual and a lot of benefit for the not-for-profit. So it really is a win-win in a lot of different ways, and encourage anyone out there who's got questions. I'm certainly happy to talk in more depth, about this as a solution.
All right. Great. Thank you. And thank you for taking the time.
Appreciate it. Have a nice day, everyone.
All right.
Thanks,
Take
Bill.
care, everyone.